Hopefully we're catching some people on the other side of the clock this time around.
Have we heard from Cy this morning?
No. I think he worked a double and a double and a double and a double and was a tad.
So what are our topics for today?
Let me pull them. Pardon? Yeah, server roles, and I think self-hosting versus renting.
That would be a douche. That was one of my main rules back.
Oh, yes. Don't be a dick.
Yeah,
I think a lot of
pretty
us have that
much.
one. A lot of Bill and Ted rules. Be excellent to each other.
Yeah, but when does that happen though?
I don't know. My folks are pretty good. I've got a couple that are fussy, but you know, the worst that happens is they get into arguments over trees.
Okay, well it is 11. I'm gonna hit the start streaming and and start recording button.
Okay.
I fixed my Twitch, so now we should be live on Twitch.
Nice.
There's drugs for that.
Yeah, caffeine. I'm getting mine right now.
That causes the twitch.
You guys are lucky I'm even awake right now. Just for the fact I did so much driving yesterday. I was down in Baltimore visiting a friend, and I'm just like beat.
I normally go to bed like 5 hours ago. I stayed up for this.
Well, we
Oh, you haven't gone
appreciate
to bed
that,
yet?
Peter.
What was that?
I said we appreciate you staying up to join us, and Karma said you haven't gone to bed yet, and you were probably too busy on the red tube to go to bed.
No, I'm combining
I didn't say that
mods.
part.
I'm cutting 73 mods down to about 15.
You have 73 mods on your server.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. That's insane.
Yeah, I know, right?
Why would you do such a thing?
Do you have
Just-
lag?
Lag? Not so much, just very low frame rate, which we're working on. We've poured enough money into the hardware, and now we're looking at the software side.
I think if I include when I'm running my normal games, not running on a mod, if I include Botman, which takes up 3, I have like 5. Because I fold
Wow.
most of the mod. I make my own mod, so I can fold in if they want to, and just to the one mod rather than having
yeah.
a bunch of different files that it's having to reference.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We update them ourselves.
Sorry, Peter, that was one of the things I actually was hoping that you would talk about again, is the amount of mods on people's servers, because sometimes you get like millions and millions of mods, and then they wonder why, the game doesn't play properly.
Oh yeah.
That came up last week, actually. Silent addressed that, saying, each time you've got another mod, it's having to open it up and do all this processing stuff. So when you've got a whole bunch of it, it really slows things down.
Yep,
Exactly.
that's what I'm working on.
When you say you had 73 mods, did you have each mod doing a specific thing? Had you written those, or why did you have so many?
A lot of them are quality of life. We have the CSMM Botman,
Of course.
Bad Company, and like the vehicle mods, but we also have custom ones that we've made, and then we have just the random ones like the lootable containers, the high hopes mods, things like that.
And if you're making your own, why would you be making separate ones? I'm not trying to accuse you or anything. I'm just kind of curious why you would make separate ones rather than fold them into one. Mm. Mm.
Yeah, but now will.
Exactly the reason.
But you should be testing them separately before.
Oh, they
Yeah,
all
yeah.
work separately. It's
Then
fine.
if you go to combine them, then you've got to go through the whole process of testing and testing and testing them all over again, which is probably what you should be doing exactly. But it's I mean, the fewer mods, the better. This is what we're aiming for, right?
Right.
Well, I mean, if you're doing XML stuff, it really doesn't affect things too much because the server's going to push the XML. It's when it comes into the API mods, like, Botman's API, CPM, what's the new one Zipcore just did? Something 7?
Bad Panda.
Bad Panda.
Well, that's
It's a high hope.
That's High Hope. But when you mix multiple APIs, server tools, then you can come into a world of issues because a lot of them have the same features. Each of them might have a different feature here and there, but they're very similar. And running multiple APIs and server managers can really muck things up.
That's not exactly true.
We did.
Prefix. Yeah. I use CSMM for its custom commands, and I use Botman for most of the other features. But CSMM also has it has better player, but Botman is more simple.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Botman's it's set up very well out of the box. You can do a lot straight out of the gate. There's a lot of stuff already set up for you to do, and CSM's it's very there's a lot of customization. You can decide what features you want. You can basically build it out to be the manager that's tuned exactly how you want it.
I think the important thing is if you're going to run two like that, I mean, they're obviously, there's the danger of conflict, but if you're going to run two, you've got to prioritize one, which is why, Kata has the one before the CSMM in the file, so that it loads first. And I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, CSMM patrons mod is actually written by Prisma. So Kata does CSMM, the website, and he did the graphical interface for the advanced claims from CPM, but CPM is actually written by Prisma. So you can use any API with CSMM. It doesn't matter because then you can work in the custom commands, but CPM was written by Prisma, to go along with CSMM, but not required.
Yeah, I mean, he put a lot of work into that, and he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, it's like peanut butter and jelly. CPM, CSM,
SM. Yeah.
All right, so not that I don't want to keep discussing this, so we can touch back on all this stuff, but let's get on to today's topics, and then, we can readdress server managers and mods in another show. We can come back to it later if we have time. Karma, what were the two topics we were gonna do today?
Today is common server rules and self-hosting versus renting.
Okay, let's start with the self-hosting versus renting. And then we can go into the server rules. I think that's more of like a natural transition.
Yeah.
I know I self-host. Karma, you rent, right?
Yep.
And Naz self-hosts. I know Silent self-hosts,
I do a bit of both.
He's not here today. And yeah, so I also self-host. When I started out, back in September of 2016 is when I started hosting my own server. Me and some friends had started playing in July, and my one buddy is a PvP enthusiast. Not me so much. But hey, I just wanted to play with my friends. So we were playing on this one server that I won't call out. But as soon as we would log off, the admin or the admin's friends would start to raid our base. So, I mean, we were underground at Bedrock, and literally the second we logged off, our shit started to get raided. So that kind of pushed me to be like, all right, well, this is bullshit. So I don't like admins or server owners who cheat like that. Now, maybe they don't consider it cheating, but I do. I'm like, that's an unfair advantage to the
Oh
rest
yes,
of the
that's
players.
cheating. Definitely
Yeah.
cheating.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
quite unethical.
I had an old PC laying around. And I threw Ubuntu 14 on it at the time, or maybe 16, and then it was just a private for me and the friends. Until I discovered that Horde Night came around, and this was on Alpha 14.7. That Horde Night came around and just tanked the box. So I got some more RAM, figuring out what would help, and it did a little bit, but it was really the CPU. And then from there, a friend of mine had actually dumped 2 PCs on me. He's like, "Hey, I have no use for these. Would you want these?" Sure. I mean, they were old. One of them was his old one. He used to do Photoshop and Premiere on, and it was already quite beefy. It had like 16 gigs of RAM. It had a decent processor. I don't even remember at this point. And then I changed over to that, still running Ubuntu. So from there, I just grew. From that machine, I went on eBay and bought a rack server, a Super Micro. It came with 32 gigs of RAM and dual Xeons. I couldn't even tell you what the original ones were, but I upgraded to 192 gigs of RAM. I was running server 2016. I had a 500 gig SSD to run the servers, and then I had a couple other drives for backups and some other stuff. And then I upgraded to dual X5690s, and that was the max CPUs that board will take. And I was running a Conan server, multiple 7 Days to Die servers, and for me, I invested a lot of money. I'm not gonna lie. I've spent more than my fair share in hardware. I mean, the RAM cost me $600 alone, another $400 for the 2 processors. I even bought copper heat sinks to try and overclock, and I never got them installed before I decided to build a new server. After a friend of mine told me about Unraid, which is a RAID array. So I started off with a Ryzen, which was the Ryzen? The
3900X.
Well, no, I got a 3950X now, but I started off with something less. It was an 816. And I'm just like, well, I'm running Plex, I'm running the server, so I'm like, I need to beef this up. And then in 2020, when in the US we got a stimulus package of $1,200, I'm like, hey, this is perfect. I can go upgrade the server. So I literally spent $1,150 out of the $1,200. I got an X570 motherboard. I had 64 gigs of RAM, and I got the 3950X. And I eventually later upgraded to another 64 for a total 128 gigs of RAM for what the hardware can hold. Unfortunately, I can't go higher than that, otherwise I would. So, for me, I've spent a lot of money on this. It is a hobby. All hobbies are expensive. I can't even say this was my cheapest hobby. But, for me, having the tower in my house, and I have a gigabit speed connection, it's 940 down, 880 up guaranteed. I usually get around 940 up. So I don't have to worry about chokeholds in my hardware that I'm paying $30-$40 a month to rent. However, it does raise my electricity bill a little bit to run the machine, but it also has multiple purposes. So for me, it's like, okay, I have this box, I own it, versus I'm just paying someone to host this, and if there's a problem on their end, I have to wait for them to fix it. Whereas my only concern is, well, I either have a hardware issue or if the internet goes down. I'm already paying for the internet for myself anyway. I didn't up it because I was running a server. I upped it because I'm a tech guy and give me the fastest speed.
Yeah.
You know, I was paying at one point $110 a month US for my internet speed, and then I went to my company and I was like, "Hey, is there anything you can do for the existing customer to lower my bill?" And I got lowered by $30. So I went from 110 to $80, and I'm quite happy with that, with the speed. I mean, I just updated some Steam games yesterday. 5.8 gigs for I forget which game it was, but it took like less than a minute. So I'm not really gonna complain about that. Like I said, the hardware. Go ahead.
I think I'm a bit biased because I love the hardware side of things, but I think self-hosting is, if you can do it, you should do it, because it has a lot of advantages. Like, for example, if you rent a server from a host or something, you have no idea how they're managing all their servers. Your server could be sharing hardware resources with dozens of other servers, and you have no control over that. And like when I was hosting with Logic servers, occasionally the FTP would go down, and you wouldn't be able to access any of the server's files, and you would just have to. I waited like 3 weeks once. I had no access. I couldn't do anything. I had to wait for them to fix it. But obviously, when you're self-hosting, that's not an issue. And there's definitely a lot of things to consider with self-hosting. You have to make sure you have enough internet bandwidth to support the amount of players that you want to run. You have to make sure you have the hardware available, and there's also other considerations, like in a data center, everything will be redundant. But when you're running at home, it's a good idea to get things like a UPS in case the power goes out, so your server's not running and writing data, and then suddenly all the power's gone, and it messes up your save or something. So I think that's a good idea if you're self-hosting, to think about these kind of things. But in general, you could run a server off an old laptop that you just happen to have lying around, and in the long run, I think even if you buy hardware, it's going to work out cheaper than if you're going to rent, because with renting, it's a constant expense you have to pay every month, and over time that's going to balloon into a massive amount of money. Whereas if you just spent a fraction of that money on hardware and ran it at home, the electricity cost will be, for me it was 3 times more expensive to rent the server out than to host it myself, just with the electricity cost.
One of the things that I prefer to rent is security concerns. What do you do for self-hosting to make sure that you're safe?
A lot of things are usually handled by your ISP before it even reaches you, but when you're self-hosting, you also have to look into things like your router's firewall and that sort of thing, and protecting the ports you have forwarded to the wider internet.
One of the other servers that I know, they were constantly they got a hacker mad, so they were constantly, their servers were getting hit by denial of service
DDoS
attacks. Yeah, attacks. How would you protect yourself if you were self-hosting? Is there any kind of vulnerability there where a hacker could find you and then get into your internal network?
I mean, it's always a possibility, but as Naz said, the ISP handles a lot of that as well. I mean, I'm sure they don't monitor, your traffic on a daily. They could. I don't know. Who knows what the alphabet and intelligence agency are doing these days. But if they see, I would imagine if they saw a spike against your IP, that they, maybe you would get an email, or maybe their security people would be like, "Hey, what's going on here? Let's take a look."
Yeah, I'd also say if you ever found yourself in that situation, you should phone your ISP and say, look, someone's DDoSing me. Is there anything you can do? And they'll be able to take care of it.
Well, for me, I'm unlikely to ever self-host just because I don't have the room for it. I don't have the background in tech to really want to deal with it.
Yeah, that's one of the perks of renting it out is it's much easier to get started and you don't have to worry about it. You can just set it up and
have somebody else deal with the issues. I've been fortunate to have pretty decent hosts, but there's always those times where you're like, I don't know what's going on. Like you mentioned, you don't know how the resources are being allocated. When I was with Bluefang, one of the other servers, I don't know who it was, that was on sharing something with me, they were getting hit by something or they were having massive problems, and it was actually affecting my server because we were like, what's going on? Why are we getting some lag? And so when I reached out to the IT support, they're like, well, yeah, what are the people on your cluster? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, that's great. Nothing I can do about that.
Yeah.
But I'm
well,
also
that's kind of like how cable
anymore.
internet works.
Yeah.
That's kind of how like cable internet works versus fiber. On cable internet, you guys are on a grid, and then the different nodes. So if someone on your node is like heavily downloading, like someone like me, or if someone's getting DDoS, like that whole grid gets attacked. Versus if there's a fiber option for you, that's direct from what the telco companies call a central office, which is, like in the US, it's like a giant green box. That's at least here in Pennsylvania. Maybe like 4 feet tall, 3 feet wide, and about 2 feet deep, where all the all the stuff runs into. So they tap into there, and then they come to your house with the fiber line. So fiber is the best option if you can get it, if it's available, and if you can afford it.
One of the problems in the UK with fiber is that it's still run through exchanges. And so by the time it actually gets to your house, it's gone through about 5 exchanges, and the gain drops every connection like that. So that can be a nightmare.
Yeah, it drives me up the wall because they advertise it as fibre internet, but it's not. It's a fibre to the cabinet, and the cabinet will be a little green box somewhere in the neighbourhood, and then once it gets to that cabinet, it's traditional copper phone wire. So that's like connecting your router with a 10 gigabit Cat5 cable, and then connecting that to your computer with a 1 gigabit and saying, oh, it's all 10 gigabit. It's not.
That's exactly exactly how it runs here.
Yeah, so that's disconcerting to me. Again, I'm in the U.S. I don't know what regulations that your guys' utilities. I don't know if even that's considered a utility over there, but what the government has as far as regulations, because you go, oh, it's a fiber backbone until it goes to your house and it's copper and that only supports up to X. And the fact that they're saying, oh, well, you can get this, to us, that's false advertising. I mean, that's, we're very litigious over here. Not, the best thing, but that's like, okay, well, that's a lawsuit because now you're misrepresenting your services and, what your customers are paying for.
Yeah, I think they get away with it because it is partly fibre, but it's not true fibre to the premises.
I'm sure if there was a class action lawsuit, if anybody had the money to invest in that could probably be fixed. But again, it all depends upon what your guys' laws are over there on what companies can be held responsible for or accountable for.
Well, I think the point is that with some ISPs over here, you are very restricted in whether you can host yourself for that reason, is because of the lack of gain on the fiber or the copper wires that come to the fiber.
Yeah, I'm sure
a lot of speeds here aren't that great, especially like if you're in a city like Edinburgh or London, you probably have fiber gigabit options, but if you're in a town or something, you're not in a great position internet-wise, and that's why I sort of switch between self-hosting and renting out, because I can only support a limited number of players, and once it starts to get to that limit, I don't have any other choice than to migrate it over to a rented service.
Karma, with your rented service, you have I imagine you log into a control panel of some sort.
Yeah.
So
For both, when I was in Bluefang, I'm with the Server Blend now.
Can you give us a little insight into the control panel? Because I haven't used anything like that. I've always self-host just because I'm a tech guy. I went to school over 20 years ago to be a network administrator. So all this, going back to Windows NT4 is my background. So working with a control panel from a renting perspective is foreign to me.
Well, some of the plus sides I find to renting one is that it doesn't just have to be me. So, like, if somebody needs to kick the server, turn it off and on again, it doesn't just have to be me, because I don't have to worry about my admins coming to my house, knocking on the door and letting themselves in. So I've got usually there's multiple people that have access to my servers. So if something goes down, they can turn it off and on again. But yeah, I access when I was with Bluefang, I access through a control panel, and I do that the same with Server Blend, so I can look at it and see, is it running? What are my numbers looking like? With Bluefang, it was pretty simple. It showed me like a little graph. Okay, this is where how much of your resources you're using, how many players are on, and then of course you have access to the files. Both of them, I'm able to get into the FTP to access the files in the backside. So I've never had a problem adding mods or doing anything. With Server Blend, I like them. Both of them have been extremely responsive when it comes to answering any technical questions that I have. Bluefang is the ones that I had. They were in the US, and Server Blend, I think, is over in the UK. But they're both extremely responsive, so I never have to wait more than 5-10 minutes maybe to get a response. Oh, and Server Blend, they offer free offsite backups every day, so I don't have to worry about my backing up, which Bluefang never had that option.
Another sort of small advantage for self-hosting is you can actually connect to the server on a local IP, so it doesn't, like, you playing on the server doesn't take up your precious upload bandwidth, and you also get the added benefit of you're connecting to a server in the same building, so you get pretty much single player level latency.
I will say the benefit of not having that is I can see, for a while I had my server based really close to where I was, so that my ping was only 5 or 10, nice and small. But I do find that the majority of my players are kind of more in the central to east side of the states. So I moved my server over there to the east side. So now I have a better idea of what the players are getting when they're having a little bit of a high ping. So I'm able to repro some of those duping issues a little easier because I have a higher ping.
Now, you mentioned, having admins come and knock on your door to come in and do stuff. I have teamed up with Flooded, and his gaming community, Tsunami Gaming, I am actually hosting his servers. Mm-hmm. I went out and we got a 2 terabyte NVMe drive that I put into the server. We're running a Windows 10 VM hosting a Darkness Falls server, a 19.5 server, Empyrean, and I think Valheim. But Valheim is actually on my unraid portion and not on the VM. And there was a Conan Exile server. I think we're still running that. I'm not sure. Because he was paying $150 a month US to rent a server to be able to host all this. Right now, he has it set up because he does most of the management for that. There's different admins for different games, and they all remote desktop in to the VM under the specific account, like 7 Days to Die for the 7 Days admin, Conan for the Conan admin, and period. So, that's all handled through remote desktop. You just open that up and bloop, bloop, log in, and then they have access to the files that they need to have access to, and whatever scripts might be running, or server managers for like Empyrean or Conan. that they might be using. So it's not necessarily, they have to show up at your door. They just need access if you were self-hosting.
Oh, sure. I'm just saying, like, if you needed to physically turn the machine off and on again.
Oh, right, yeah.
You can set up,
very rarely.
You can set up
Go
Wake on
ahead.
LAN options, so you can basically send a message through the network, and it will ping the computer it's targeted at, and it will turn itself on.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, it's probably similar to what I have.
Yeah, you can have it. You go in, you can have it remote start. My server is mostly up unless I'm doing maintenance, and I've been doing a lot of maintenance recently. Since my server is a RAID array, with the Unraid software, I have 3 warnings on drives that are aging out. And in fact, I just picked up a 16 terabyte drive Thursday to replace one of my aging drives, an 8 terabyte. So I'm swapping that out on Tuesday. So I will be down, I'd like to say less than an hour, because I got to figure out which of the 11 drives, where it's at, so I can pull it and put the new one in. And then the RAID array will rebuild, but the servers will be back online. And since we migrated, since the servers we're hosting isn't on the array but a separate NVMe drive, there should be little performance issues on it. While it takes like about 2 days to rebuild the drive from the parity. So, mostly my uptime is usually pretty good unless I'm doing something like installing, supercharged fans make sure there's no overheating of the box or anything like that. That's another thing. My situation with hosting my server is a lot more in depth because I do a Plex server, versus just a game server. I wouldn't need as much stuff. And if I was building just a game server, I would build it a little bit differently as far as the hard drives are concerned. I would do what I did with my normal gaming rig and just buy maybe a couple NVMe's and then a few 2.5 SSDs to run the stuff off, because running the games off an SSD is much better than running it off a traditional hard disk. Sai could attest to that. I mean, they've got multiple servers, I believe, physical boxes that they run. So that's another thing. If you're going to self-host and your primary function is just to do game server hosting and not like a multi-function server like I have, NVMe's and SSDs and a good portion of RAM are the way to go. Depending on the game, it can eat up RAM, especially if you're running mods like Darkness Falls, Undead Legacy, Ravenhurst, anything that introduces new assets and physicalities into the game. New guns, new vehicles, new blocks. All that stuff gets run through Unity and takes up RAM. Now, the game being unoptimized, there's only so much you can do to optimize a mod. So it doesn't, it uses as little RAM as possible, but I think Kane recommends at least 12 gigs to run Darkness Falls. So his maps, he has multiple pre-generated maps. I think Captain Crunch did those, and everything's gonna his medium map, I think, is the 8K. I think large is 10K, and the extra large is 12K sized maps. So you're running a 12K sized map, plus all the assets he has in there, you're definitely going to need RAM. And that's another thing. If you're renting, now you're going to host Darkness Falls or one of the other mods, you have to pay more to cover that RAM, because usually I think a lot of not at your host.
Yeah, I'm using Darkness. I have a whole list of mods that I may have access to, and I did not get charged any extra to run Darkness Falls.
Okay, now that's true for your host, but I've seen other hosts, like, they might only start you out at 8 gigs of RAM. And now it's like, oh, well, you need 12 to run Darkness Falls. Well, now you're going to pay an extra X amount a month to have access to more RAM.
I will say that, like, Blue Fang was charging extra for larger maps, or you got more seats and then you had access to larger maps because it was taking more RAM. And that was a switch that they didn't, I think it was 18 when they changed how the maps were generated.
When I was using Logic servers, they didn't charge for RAM, but if you wanted to run a large overhaul mod like that, you would have to pay an extra fee because it would need more RAM. And by default, vanilla server, they only allocated you 6 gigs of RAM.
Oh. Yeah, different places will charge you different for how much RAM you want to have.
Yeah.
But I will say, if you have Blue Fang and you want to run a larger map than what you're paying for, just make a larger map because they don't actually do a check. Just FYI.
Do we have any more questions or any questions at all about self-hosting versus renting from the audience?
I just like the control that self-hosting provides. Like, you're not restricted by anything other than your own ability and your own money.
And
Yeah,
part of the reason. Go ahead, Naz.
You can pretty much just do what you want. You don't have to worry about, oh, will I need to buy more RAM from the host, or will they not allow certain types of mods to be uploaded via FTP, that sort of thing.
Yeah, some hosts actually do restrict DLLs and whatnot. So you have to put your support ticket in, say, hey, I want to add this, and it's up to their leisure of when they're going to let you upload it or download it and add it to your files.
I had to file a support ticket every time there was a CPM update because they wouldn't let me upload the DLL.
And as far as I know, some or all of the hosts restrict your access to the server config XML.
Well, I would imagine that they would put that through their control panel.
I could mod everything on my servers.
Again, that's up to the host too. It's how much control.
I've only rented with 2 different places, and I've been able to make my own mods and change all that.
I've never had any problem with Blue Fang when it comes to adding mods.
They made it very easy to get into the FTP. The file structure is a little bit different with Server Blend, but not significantly.
I use NFO, and there's an option to go with an unmanaged server where you basically can remote desktop into it and run it.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, that's a good. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a good solution if you're wanting to do more than run just a single server. If you want to run multiple servers or even different types of games as a server, that's a good solution if you don't have the upload bandwidth to do it at home.
Yeah, they let you rent the box if you like, and then you can run whatever games you want to on it for free.
Yeah, it's basically a VPS, a virtual private server. That's what Flooded was using before I started hosting the servers. Like I said, he was paying $150 a month for that, but then it's your choice of operating system. It's your choice of whatever you want to do. It's basically your own computer just hosted in someone's data center. So, but again, those get costly. I mean, $150 a month is, quite a bit of change. You're talking like what, $1,800 a year, which if I had an extra $1,800 a year, I wouldn't want to put it towards that. I'd want to save that to go on a trip somewhere or something. So that option can be expensive. Yeah, I think Cat is running something like that for the CSM instances because he's got the AU, the EU, and the US. So I don't know what his costs are, but I don't think the donations definitely cover the majority of that.
Yeah, it's a couple $100 I pay a month, I think. But there's other servers that you don't see, like development servers and monitoring and all that stuff.
So, go ahead. Any other questions on this, or Judge, you have something you want to chime in with?
Yeah, I was just curious about the CPUs in servers. So I was running a Xeon, or I'm currently running a 2186 that I'm renting. And someone said that's at the bottom of the barrel, and I was looking it up. I was like, well, that thing's only 2 years old. So I was curious, are desktop processors better?
Well, it all depends. Server processors, Like the Xeons, because like I said, I was running dual Xeon X5690s, and they capped that at 3.8 gigahertz. Now, when it comes to 7 Days to Die, Unity isn't quite up to speed with spreading the joy to use multiple cores as well as it could. Again, nothing against the Unity team. I'm not calling them out for that. It's just not there yet. So with 7 Days to Die, even if you have an epic 128 core, this and that, Silent has out on enterprise level hardware. No matter what you do, it's still going to choke, just because the way Unity's done. Most of the stuff goes to the primary core. It'll do like 90, like somewhere between 75 and 90% of the work, and then offload a little bit to another core, maybe even a third. So, what's the gigahertz on that CPU? Do you know offhand?
4.0.
4.0. Okay, and do you know what the I can't think of the term, but like what version of it is? As like as an example, like some of the older Intel, like recently older Intels like Sandy Lake and stuff like that. The architecture.
Coffee Lake.
Coffee Lake. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, and
that'll be pretty good for 7 Days to Die. It's got
like the L1 caches and stuff like that.
The base is a little low, but if you might be able to set the boost as pretty much running all the time. I think it's called. I forget what it depends what motherboard it is, what it will be called exactly, but basically it forces it to run the boost clocks all the time, and you can turn it on in the motherboard's BIOS.
I think Intel calls it speed step.
Yeah, I think that's
called something else.
Yeah, supposedly it boosts to 4.9.
All core optimization or something like that. I think that's Asus's name for it.
Yeah, and again, it's still limited by the game engine. So what's more important with the games is gigahertz versus cores, because if the game engine doesn't support the distribution of load across all the cores, it's still gonna choke the game at some point. Sai's really more into the hardware aspect, like more up to date than I am. I'm a Ryzen guy, and I have been since the late 90s, early 2000s. And I mean, even to the point where, I need to apply a patch, every so often to get this to work. And they've come a long way since then. And, I think Intel is a little overpriced for, to be competitive. I'm not saying, don't get Intel. It's everyone's personal choice. But I'm just a bit of a Ryzen guy now when it comes to the processor, seeing how far they've come in the last 30 years.
I am too.
My gaming machine is a 3900X. My server is a 3950X. And I'll tell you right, if I could afford a Threadripper, I'd have a Threadripper. It's just, $2,000 for a CPU. I did not hit the lottery. I can't go afford that. But believe me, if I had the means, I'd have it. I'd go out to the computer store right now and buy all the shit, and like that's what I'm doing for today.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting as well. Things like the name Xeon and Ryzen, those are product names that have multiple CPUs under them. So a Ryzen CPU can range from something that's like 4 cores, or I don't know if they do a dual core, but all the way down to 4 cores up to, I don't know, what's the fastest Ryzen chip you get? 64 cores?
That's the, well, I don't know.
Threadripper.
See, that the Epic isn't the Ryzen. The Epic is the enterprise version.
Yeah.
So that's
Ryzen Epics. It's the same idea as Intel Xeon. It's for the enterprise.
Right.
So you can get.
If you're running, go ahead.
You can get Xeons that are like low-powered low clock speed, dual core, all the way up to like 64 core high clock speed chips. So Xeon can mean pretty much anything.
Right, that's their branding. What it comes down to, besides the brand is what's recognizable. Oh, AMD Ryzen, I know what that is, or AMD EPYC, or Threadripper. Threadripper is another brand. So it comes down to the architecture, and that's the architecture, the speed, cache on the processor. That's what you really want to be look at especially if you're self-hosting. If you're renting, they're like, oh, well, we have this. You can do your research, and you can always Google comparison, this chip versus that chip, and the benchmarks will come up, and it'll give you a bit of an idea. But on the very simplistic and basic, it's your gigahertz and your cache, and then game engine. Like I said, Unity isn't up to what it should be as far as distribution of load across all your cores. To be able to make it more what's the word I'm looking for?
Multi-threaded.
Multi-threaded for performance. I know Unreal just announced Unreal 5 engine, so I'm kind of curious of what's going to come out with that, because I like Conan, and that's on the Unreal, and Valheim, that's Unity, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same as 7 Days to Die.
Yeah, I know it's voxel, but not for nothing, I think that looks a little bit better than 7 Days. So I think I just hurt Madmole's feelings. Good thing he doesn't listen.
Oh, someone left. That must have been Madmole.
No.
No, Peter's here. Yeah. Oh, it was someone with
Auden.
an O, I think. Auden, yeah, Auden. Yeah, Karma's good for tracking that.
Yeah.
So any more input or questions about the hardware versus running, owning versus running? Because right now we're at 12:45 here on the East Coast.
Minutes.
I know, Karma, you said you had a.
I thought I had a hard stop. No, I was able to shift some things around, so not a problem.
Okay. All right. So if there's no more on owning versus renting, which again we can touch again on in the future, let's go to server rules.
I'm pretty lax on server rules. I've got the basics, no cheating, no hacking, no duping, don't be a dick, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I've got a very small server, so I generally just let them do what they want.
I add no, building in POIs, just because when they introduced the all of the different quests that you can go on, it was just a lot of confusion about which quests are the ones that are in which buildings, and just like, what, I don't feel like, having to approve every single building people plan, so now it's just, don't build it. If you didn't build it, don't claim it. Nice and simple.
Yeah, we have that, and we have like no drop mining and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a favorite of mine, no drop mining. Actually, on mine, that's a bannable offense. It's
I don't even really worry about it.
Well, it can crash the server, that's the thing.
Yeah, and I agree. I guess, I don't know, maybe I don't have too much problem with it, or I think that a lot of my players have been playing on my server for, I have some players that have been playing on my server longer than I have, which is kind of funny because I'm a second gen owner. But yeah, they've been around since, the server was created in December 2014, so most of them know that that's a big no-no. So I don't usually call it out.
I think that more comes into play with PvP than PvE.
Yeah, probably.
I have, since I have run PvP and I don't have one currently, just because, the condition of the game, I would like to. It's just that I'm having trouble finding players. So I personally am not running any SFS, Spectral Force server, 7 Days to Die servers right now. I mean, if you want to play, Flooded and Tsunami Gaming has the Darkness Falls and the A19.5. You're more than welcome to join. You can go to tsugaming.com, for the community's website. But Yeah, it's when it comes to the PvP, drop mining's a big thing.
Yeah.
I do put in rules about, taking advantage of exploits like duping and clipping. That clipping thing really pisses me off. It's like, it's in the game, it's a problem. To me, that's cheating, taking advantage of the in-game exploits that TFP has not gotten around to fix, because for them, it's not a high priority, because it's supposed to be an 8-player co-op game and not PvP. Unfortunately, they underestimated the market of people wanting to kill each other. So hopefully, 7 Days to Die 2, when that comes out in 2072, will account for PvP. And hopefully they've learned a lot from this experiment on what not to do. Like, leave Madmol be in charge of project management. So,
Wow.
ooh, squirrel! Shiny! So, for me, it's on my PvP servers, I do not allow griefing, because it causes a toxic environment. And if you don't like it, you can find another server to play on. So basically what happens is, if you're a PvP player, you kill someone, you cannot stalk them. You cannot show up their base, they pop their head out, and whack them all their ass. No. Because that gets the griefing. That does not make it fun. If you raid a player's base, you have that player has a 2-day, 48-hour real-time protection to be able to fix their base, and it gives them time to figure out where they broke in, where their flaw is, to shore that up. And then after that, it's free game again. Now, I use CSMN when I do my servers, so the advanced claims that Prisma came up with are a godsend, because I can put a custom command in to literally protect that person's base for 48 hours without someone coming in to raid it. Well, basically what happened, they try and go in and they get teleported out, which I believe Botman has the same feature.
Yeah, protection.
With the protection. So, and they can, if it's a group, they can whitelist their friends so they can come in and out as well. So, that cuts down on, people trying to get around that rule. I talked about this last week, but I did have, part of the griefing, I did have players at one point, completely surround this person's base with campfires to bring the zombies in, and then someone was underground, had their mic open, rolling them for, extended period of time. Now, the only thing worse I think they could have done was play It's a Small World, like the Disney ride.
Yeah.
So, as much as I found that funny, as the owner of the server and the primary admin at the time, it's like, listen, guys, you gotta stop doing that. That's too much. That is griefing. And again, like I said, you kill a player and then you go to, hunt them down. Another thing I have is, don't destroy the shit inside the base. Don't destroy their workstations. Don't level their base. You got people who've spent, literal hundreds of hours building their base, and you come in and just decide to level it. And I'm like, that's a dickhead move. And rule number 1 on all my servers is don't be a dick.
Yeah.
I've been waking up at like, that and trolling and being like a general douche, spouting off hate. I don't want to say hate speech, but stuff people could find offensive. Like I had a woman playing on my servers, and she's my friend, so she texted me and say, hey, listen, these guys are saying all kinds of shit. And I was like, all right, I got up and I looked at the chat, and I'm like, all right, boom, boom. I didn't even give him a warning. I'm like, but go on. And if I have to ban you, my minimum ban is 1,000 years. Now, granted, we're all going to be well dead in dust, and as well.
I'm
as,
not.
So,
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, there can be only one.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do it to make a statement. Like, if I need to ban you, there's a problem. I'm pretty lax when it comes to most things, as long as it's like, okay, all right, as long as no one's really bitching about it, I can kind of let you get away with it. But as soon as you start abusing my gracious nature, that's it. You're done. Like if you come in and start using the N word, if you start, being
Oh yeah,
derogatory
Instagram.
to anybody for any reason, like, oh, well, you're a girl and negative, boom, you're gone. I don't have patience. I don't have time. That's toxic behavior.
Yeah.
Do that somewhere else. Do that on one of the servers I host 90 players. All right. Don't do it on mine. Actually, I can actually check my Discord because I do leave my rules up. I usually put my Discord link in the server description so people can at least pop on. But there is I think an unreleased mod out there that allows for an escape menu, which I've worked my rules into.
One of these days I'll get around to that. I'll throw out one more rule that I have in mind. I have a rule for common sense because like there's stuff that's changing constantly. So I try to keep things nice and light so people can have fun and do their thing. And I don't really care about clipping because it's PVE, so whatever. But I think most people get the common sense stuff. And for those things that are not necessarily completely spelled out, like I don't allow for rating and whatnot, I'll give people a little bit of leeway. But common sense, use it.
Yeah, I have a leftover rule from a little while ago. Mini bikes are used at your own risk. That was before they actually
fucking mini bikes are evil. Oh, I hate those things.
Definitely.
That's before they actually okay, so for those of you who don't know, and our newer players and admins, the mini bike prior to A17 was literally a graphic speed boost. So if you played before that, you might seen your guy or your character's feet like running at high speed. So what TFP did was they put a graphical and audio overlay to your character moving super fast. So it's like, oh, I can build a mini bike, and that was basically a giant speed boost, depending on your engine quality and stuff like that back then.
I think it was.
So it wasn't
Alpha 15. I was on the mini bike, and then I got off it, and it literally drove away from me. It drove off without me.
I've had that happen. And thanks to, I think it was copies back then, there was a command, I think, to retrieve the vehicle, because I've had to use that a few times. I don't know if that was a Prisma thing after copy couldn't carry on, and Alpha 15, or
I remember that.
Copies.
Get bike.
Yeah. So we get back, but that was a graphical overlay for a speed boost. It wasn't an actual vehicle. Now with Alpha 17 came actual vehicles with the bicycle, the mini bike, the motorcycle, the 4x4, and gyrocopter.
Yeah, the gyrocopter is the mini bike of the skies.
Yeah. And there are a couple of mods that introduce new vehicles. I was playing on Guppy Curse server, and I think it was it might have been 17 or 18, but there was like an ambulance, there was a cop car, and a few other vehicles that could hold multiple passengers. So I don't remember who made that mod. I don't know if it was Guppy. I don't remember if it was one of the other guys. I know one of the modders, I can't remember his name, it's killing me, that works for an actual AAA game studio. So I'm pretty sure he's been busy with work and has been out of the community for a while. But I think it was him and it teamed up to do the vehicles. But now there's actually it's kind of what?
Are they the ones that made the short bus?
they maybe. Like I said, I'm drawing a blank because I haven't seen them around. I'm a mod on Guppy server for people who don't know. So people come and go, but I can't. It's like, oh, if I don't see someone for a while, I kind of forget their name. Like I know. Prior to A17, there was 308 who made some really cool SDX mods before the DMT. One was like a rotating bridge. So like how we have the drawbridge. Well, basically what he did was made not necessarily drawbridge, but like a bridge that could just rotate. And you couldn't cross. You'd have to find another way over the moat or the pit or whatever you dug. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then he had something that came up out of the ground, like a turret or something. Like you could have it sink into the ground, and like, oh, a trigger would like make it raise and then start shooting the zombies or other players.
Yeah, I've tried a few of the helicopter mods, and the thing that gets me is if they can do it in a mod to have a helicopter actually control like a helicopter, why can't they have the gyrocopter not fly like a plane?
Priorities. You got to remember, the priority of Manmo is it must look pretty. Functionality takes a back seat. And I know I feel like I'm picking on Manmo, and if he hears this, like, you just, I defended you for a long, I defended you for a long time, and I like the fact that you like to make the game pretty, but I want core functionality improvements. Give me some information like, hey, we're working on this system. It may not be ready for A20, but it's something in the works. Give me something, the meat. It's great that the food comes out on my plate and it looks amazing, like it came out of a 5-star Michelin restaurant. But I need to know, where the hell was that chicken raised at? Was it free range? Was it was it a Kentucky Fried Chicken where it was just in a little cage, just clucking
in a
its little...
can?
Right? Is it spam? Are you trying to sell me spam? Like, give me the meat. Give me some in-depth information. Like, hey, we're working on this system. It may or may not be ready. I'm not promising anything, but this is in the works. Let me know. Give me some actual content. Because when you show me the shiny, it makes me concerned about what's behind the shiny.
Mm-hmm. Window dressings.
Yes.
Did you see the new, some of the new weapons, and the MP5 SMG has a spoon on it for some reason?
Wait, hold on. It has a spoon on it?
Yeah.
Hold on. I have an announcement channel somewhere that tracks this. I just forget which Discord it's on.
Right.
7-day related media.
The
That's
dev
public,
diary.
Right? Let's see. Stable. Oh, okay. Yeah, here we go. I don't know how I feel about the junk weapons. I mean, you took away weapons parts when you went to A17, so I'm a little disappointed with that. I like the fact that I needed parts. I like a little bit more in-depth when it comes to crafting. So, having a recipe that goes more than 5 items, I'm okay with, but I think that's hard-coded. But, yeah, what's up with this pistol with a scope? Seriously. Is this the junk pistol that they're showing, and then the junk rifle?
I think it might be like remodels of existing weapons and some new pipe weapons.
They're pipe guns, I think they are.
Yeah, I think someone's been playing a little bit of Fallout with the pipe weapons. Again, these are all shinies to me, like not real content. Like, so please stop distracting me with shinies. Yeah, like the one before that on May 19th, there's the new safe, a new plant texture, a mailbox, a US mailbox that looks like it's coming in, and they redid the cooking pot, it looks like. I'm like, this is all great, but new
different
fire
teams
hydrant.
working on different things.
Yeah.
I'll reiterate that one.
Yeah, I will say that they've done a lot of work on the world. Like you look at some of the screenshots, like from the 19th, you can see they've got a real intersection, and it looks good, and it's supposedly that's how the new RNG is going to turn out.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know if Damocles is going to pop up when A20 drops to update nitrogen or not, because that's the only time he pops up is when the new alpha comes out.
Has anyone heard from him? It kind of disappeared.
Well, he does that. Usually he'll be there around for like the first week or two of a new alpha, and then he's gone again. So I'm hoping he pops up at the beginning of A20 to update nitrogen. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it takes 3 minutes for on my PC to generate an 8K map in nitrogen. Yep. All right. Now, what the reports we're getting from behind the scenes is that the new RWG system is going to take approximately a minute per square kilometer. So an 8K map will take 8 minutes. So my question is, how can Damocles with nitrogen do it in 3 minutes and TFP is doing it in 8 minutes? Like, I don't know if it's just optimization or,
I think it's because when you generate it in vanilla, you've also got the game client running, and that's probably limited. It can't utilize multiple cores, where with nitrogen you've got a dedicated application that can. It doesn't have to run the game in the background, and it has the potential to be made to take advantage of multiple cores.
I think that's probably, you've nailed it on the head there, because like with KingGen, it's the same. It's a separate entity completely, and you don't have to be running the game to generate a world, and I think that's why it's faster.
Mm-hmm.
I was chatting with one of the QA folks, and that's kind of the gist of, because I brought it up, like, hey, why is nitrogen so much faster? And I don't see that it's ever going to be like the in-game function is never going to be as fast as something that's separate.
But here's the thing, though. You can with the world preview, you can generate the map right there. You're not running. You're running the client, but you're not in game. It's not using the other resources. Like, you're not running around and looting and everything else while this is trying to gen. I'm like, why can't that if you're only running the client to generate the map?
I think it's because when you load the menu, it's actually loading a lot of the game data before you actually jump into a game, like the blocks and stuff like that. But you're right, and I don't know what it's actually processing when you're in the menu, other than 10,000 frames per second.
Right. Oh, hey, look at this pretty opening screen. Look at this pretty menu. So, there's a ton of tools out there. Someone actually came out with an XML tool for doing mods. I haven't quite had time to dig into it to figure it out. It's a little bit different than I would have done had I have programming knowledge and the ability to do it. But it looks like it's a good start to be able to help to make mods and output to the various config files you need to do. I'm still kind of curious what other modding tools that TFP said they're going to give us down the line, if anything else.
Yeah, I think it was Alpha 18. They added GPU acceleration to the map generation, but it didn't work when you did it through a server. So it was all CPU on a server, but on the client you could utilize your GPU, so it was faster to create a map on the client and then upload it to the server.
I mean, down the line, my suggestion to TFP, if anyone listens, is to give us a separate tool set. So it's not, we don't have to load the client, but we can load a tool set as like an additional download that you can just include when the game downloads to be able to do the different types of modding, especially with Steam Workshop support coming. I think that'll benefit if they could do something like that eventually. I know,
you mean an SDK, right?
I mean, what?
An SDK. So you have a toolkit which runs standalone, and you have all the things to create maps, write mods, and what else,
Yes, exactly. Like an SDK, I guess. The developers kit for modding, which would, make it easier. Put it, going back to Conan, they have a whole separate download for modding. I don't understand. I haven't looked into the Unreal's blueprint kit to like the blueprint process that they use to do the modding for Conan's and other Uton games. But yeah, like having a separate kit that you can download to be able to mod, I think would take, you wouldn't have to load the full game, and it would be more optimized to be able to do what you need to do. So maybe that's something they can look forward to in the future. Maybe a modder out there decides that they want to take on the task and try that themselves. considering how moddable the game is, who knows? But yeah, I think a separate kit for that would definitely be the way to go.
I mean, that would probably be something that would be done after the game's, gotten out of alpha.
Right, definitely. Even if it's after gold, I think we heard that Workshop might be coming in beta, but it might not be until gold. Like I said, Madmole isn't as loose-lipped as he used to be with upcoming features and progress of the game. He went from oversharing to no sharing. So, I understand. It's just, if you could at least give us like somewhere in between on what's going on, I think the community as a whole would appreciate that a little bit more.
Oh, they'll find something to complain about. You know that.
Yes, yeah. It's just human nature. You got to find something to complain about.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. What else? Is there anything else we want to chat about? I feel like we've covered rules. Are there any other rules that other people have that haven't come up yet?
What was his name? Posted a text file with a lot of stuff. Thank you for doing that. Lots of rules in there, like don't build yeah, no looting players' backpacks, no building less than XXX blocks away from trader.
It drives me crazy when people have I've got a bunch of, and I have my core rules, but then I have a lot of announcements that are played when people are gaming and whatnot, and giving the traders room to breathe is one of them. Also, not making tree farms. Those things do bad stuff.
They made a point. In my opinion, it's really a shame that you have to make such rules, like not placing a claim block near the traders or not to place too many blocks and stuff like that. As I started with the community I'm currently working together with, we had double amount the server rules. And it was really a mess because players had to read all the rules, and they don't usually. So they know the rules at all, and we automated such things away. I mean, there are the tools, not only what I made, but others made such tools as well. So you can automate such things away just with normal mods or API mods and stuff like that. And such tools are missing for me in the game a bit.
Recently, is that why you wanted to create on your API mod? Is that what inspired you to do that?
Basically, yes. Yeah.
I mean, we know how you Germans love your rules and your organization.
I mean, my goal was to reduce the amount of support tickets and the time admins have to spend on the server to fix stuff, so they concentrate on other things, like important stuff, which really needs an admin to solve, It cannot be automated.
Human parts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and one thing was like, I mean, you know how the fin pimps are, but recently I discovered a bug. When you have multiple claim blocks on the map and you place, let's say, your second or your third claim block inside a quest POI, then a player can reset that POI since the game code is only checking the first claim block set by each player. And I've reported that, and at the same time I was like, well, could you please maybe add a server setting so server owners can decide or not to skip the bedroll check for quest POIs, for example, which would my own work obsolete, but it would be a great addition, in my opinion, since we get a lot of requests from players that we could please search where the bedroll is and destroy it for them, since they don't like to search hours and hours inside a big skyscraper just for a simple bedroll to start their own quest. And usually that bed is not even in use.
Well, I know CPM has a function to... I know they can't place claim blocks. I don't know if it applies to bedrolls as well.
Oh, that's easy. I can do that, and you can do it with CPN, and I'm pretty sure server tools can do that as well. So you have at least 3 tools which can do that, but from my point of view, it should be still allowed to place a bedroll, but it should be allowed to rewrite the building by starting the quest as well when there's a bedroll.
You can have CSM block the placement of any block, and the bedroll, I believe, is a block.
I believe you're right. I do believe the bedroll is a block.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so it can be blocked. The same as any other thing. We usually have just frames, so we block frames from being placed in certain places.
Yeah, but I think Zip's like on to something to have TFP, maybe, even not reset it, but say if it's a quest POI, to not be able to place the land claim or a bedroll there. Just default in the game. Like, oh, well, we know this is a quest POI, you can't take it. So I think that would be a nice fundamental feature of the game.
No, I was saying I would like to have it that you can decide that your server is skipping the check for a bedroll inside a claim when a player starts a quest. So you can reset the building regardless if there's a bedroll or not. I mean, claim block checks should be still there. Otherwise, people would cry that the base is simply lost.
Too bad if you're building it and play it to POI. That's my thought.
Right. If you're trying to, I depending on the server when I'm running it, I might just set up cities as reset zones. Like I would just whatever region that city spans. Like if it's 4 regions, I make all 4 regions a reset zone, and I have the notification. You walk in, hey, reset zone, don't build here. After that point, if the player does it, I'm kind of like, well, there's a notification when you go in there, and it says, do not build here. That's kind of on you.
Yeah.
That's your own fault.
Reset zones that notifies you, and then once the server resets, the bedroll goes away.
Well, any improvements would go away because what happens, at least with CPM, it basically resets that region to day 1.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, if you spent like 600 hours building your Supreme base in a reset region, it's like, oh, well, you know what? Server's 300 days old. I'm going to do a region reset to regenerate the resources and whatnot. Oh, well, shit. Well, dude, you walked in there, it said don't build here. That's not my problem that you didn't pay attention to the rules.
Exactly. That's how we do it. The only problem is if somebody wants to quest there, they have to wait for a reset for that bedroll to go away.
Yeah, I think I speak for every admin in existence when I say I wish players would read more.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely.
And then they log in and go, where did my bedroll go? Were you in a POI?
Yep.
I have my server set up so all players spawn for the first time in the carrier, and it's out in the water, and you spawn in front of some signs that tell you if you can choose your spawn, and you jump into a ribby, and it teleports you to the shore in another boat, and you can tell when they haven't read it because you'll see on like player tracking that they swam to the shore.
I have my rules when they press accept to enter the server. I have the rules when they first log on the first time because they get sent to a lobby. It's right there. I have my rules rotating through the announcement systems. I have the rules on my Discord. I have the rules everywhere. And people are like, oh, I didn't know I couldn't build here. Too bad. So sad. I have no sympathy for you.
We have the rules inside the escape menu. So when you like to enter your options or even like to exit the server, you see the rules and a tab which shows all the zones and stuff. And players play for like, let's say a week or so on our servers and still haven't read the rules. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here?
I am very, very, very certain that they have, and they just wanted to see if they could get away with it. And then when, something bad happens to them, like, oh, I didn't know. I'm like, yeah, you did. You knew. You did.
Like I basically gave you a rules enema. If you don't know, that's on you.
Yep. All right, buddy.
You can't fix stupid.
No, we can't.
Nobody can kill them in game.
That's my job as a server owner, is to have my players killed. My servers are well aware of my stance on that. Is doing whatever I can for them to get killed.
I can see you've never ran a tabletop RPG. Because when I do it, I do my best not to kill the players. I've definitely held rolls and punches and whatnot, but when they're too stupid to figure it out, the dice fall where they may.
Mm.
Yeah,
If you want to go attack the great old dragon, that's on your dumbass.
I started a Dead is Dead server, and it's basically designed to kill you and just be as brutal as possible. And
Yep.
if you die, your player character gets deleted and you have to start again. It's on the highest difficulty, 25% loot, and zombies are always running at nightmare speed. And I think the record for the fastest death from first joining the server was about 7 seconds.
Yeah.
My friend has it on console, and that's kind of like how he plays. You know, it's like, all right, I'll play to my first death, and then after that, I start with a new character, new world, and everything. So he already kind of plays that, even though the console version is pretty much dead, at least for the time being. So, and he'll play. His game is pretty much like, oh, if you join, it's PvP. But first time he's dead, it's like, all right, boom. Like he was telling me, like, his current game is up to like 31 days, but before that he dies like, he's like, I died at day 6, and I died at day like 14, and just restarts. Again, there's no improvements on the console, so he's actually playing a slightly better version, in my opinion, of the game than what we have overall. But yeah, Dead is Dead. I would trigger that as a optional thing when I was using Rat full time, and Trek and put that in there. I made it as, this is optional. If you want to play like this, you're more than welcome to. So it would, essentially reset, the player file, the backup file, and I believe the map, but I could be mistaken on the map. And then, you're a fresh character.
Speaking of maps, what is everybody using for a map generator?
I use Nitrogen when I have a server running.
Nitrogen.
I've been using KingGen.
What would be the differences for KingGen and Nitrogen?
Yeah, I was looking at that the other day.
KingGen is fast, and plus you can choose more of the sizes of the biomes and how much of the biomes actually exist on the map.
Well, there's sliders for that in Nitrogen. Is it different than that?
Well, KingGen also actually uses the XML files for the prefabs as far as being able to set restrictions on biome and zone placement for prefabs. So whereas Nitrogen does not, it ignores them.
I do like the option in Nitrogen about having the highways. That's always a fun project for my players. They like to fix up the highways and whatnot. So I thought that was a pretty cool feature.
By the way, the biome map can be made after you have generated the map. So when you have a map, for example, and the only thing which you like to change with the biomes, just edit the image for the biomes before you generate the world, like using the pre-gen map to start a game. You can still edit the biome map.
Yeah, it's what I did for my A19 map. I generated something that was close enough, and then I just painted in where I wanted the biomes to be.
Exactly, that's what I'm doing.
You can do the same thing with KingGen. You can create your own biome map and then have it use that to build.
I'm using Photoshop additionally to make my own height map and mask where the cities are to spawn and where not. So I like to have them match the regions, so I don't need much region zones, and the region zones are covering the towns almost perfectly and stuff like that.
I'd like to interject here when it comes to custom maps. If you want to really design your own from the ground up, there is a tutorial for that we have. Where's it at? I believe it's the DTM. Yeah, DTM terrain tutorial, which is in our modding facts channel under the modding category. It's the second link. So this is, you can build it, height map, everything from the ground up to create your very own custom world. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but the tutorial is there if that's something you're interested in, to be able to do that instead of using KingGen or Nitrogen. You can really get very customizational with that, depending on what you're looking for.
Well, I might make my maps like an artwork in Photoshop, so really the height map is pixel for pixel handmade. There's nothing generated.
Yeah, Zip. I would definitely check out the download for the DTM tutorial
I
and see
checked
if that's
the
something.
tutorial.
Oh, just okay.
Is the
That's
bug
prefer
still?
using Photoshop, honestly.
Is the bug in Nitrogen where the no trader quest happens still there?
I think that's fixed.
I've seen it.
I don't know.
I remember it in experimental, but I think it's fixed now.
Okay, yeah, that's why we stopped using it about 2 months ago, maybe 3.
Well, does anybody want to try their hand at reading Vogon poetry?
Not I.
Not particularly.
I
was using nitrogen, and I don't like the way it scatters burnt and wasteland like throughout the entire map. I'd like to have it consolidated to one area. So I think I'm going to try King Gen to see if it works better.
Yeah, I would have appreciated an opportunity to have the burnt and the wasteland areas not as necessarily as the craters.
Yeah.
That bugged me too.
I put up an example there of a King Gen map, so you can see how the biomes are more spread out.
I definitely like the
Oh,
preview
nice.
images you get with the modded maps like Nitrogen and King Gen. They give you a good.
So you can see where things are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like generating a ton of them so I can that's a really busy map. Wow. How big is that?
I like Zipcore's map he just posted. I mean, he's got the water surrounding us. It's just a giant island, but a couple of desert biomes, a couple of snow biomes, and then what's that main one there, Zip? The dark brown. Is that Wasteland?
Oh, the stripes? That's the reset zones?
No. The like
the sort of maroon
like the dark
color.
brown, like
that's the burnt biome.
Which biome?
So the brown reddish is the burnt forest.
Okay, so your main city is in a burnt forest, like dead center of the map.
Well, there's a bit of wasteland in the city center as well.
Okay, wasteland too. Okay.
And red dot is a PvP trader without any protection, so players have an automated PvP event. Each day, the PvP trader is only open for, I think, 3 or 4 in-game hours. And the green dots are where the safe zone traders are located. And players spawn at the safe zone traders, by the way, so you can join the server during a blood moon without to worry about anything and stuff. And on the bottom right is pretty interesting. That's a totally flat area where players cannot claim, and we only use it to make events. So we can have prefabs we load in, like Deathmatch Arena and stuff like that, or the community can build stuff there, and we can use it for events, and nobody can build a base there.
What kind of events do you run?
Last time I was creating I was using CPM, I think. CPM has the world edit tools, right? Like FBlock and so on. I was creating a big cube out of reinforced concrete, and I made tunnels through using admin tools, and we made it like a dungeon. So you had 5 different group spawns with each had their own entrance inside, and it was really chaotic, like goes up and down, a lot of corridors with a lot of loot chests inside, and it was like a great heist where different teams spawn at the same time, and they can respawn at the group spawn, and the first team which reaches the top of the building gets something extra, and as everybody else which gets to the roof has the loot safe they have with them. So people were fighting against each other for the loot inside the dungeon.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it was a massacre.
See, your job is to get people killed.
Yeah, we had around 300 kills.
Wow.
40 minutes, yeah, so
That's definitely one of the things I would like. And I just I would love to build a dungeon and just place it underground and just have like whether PvP events or maybe like have like a quest where you have to find it and then you have to go through and defeat the various zombies in there and just put it in a PvP zone. So if someone else has it and or even just like make an event like you guys have it, to be like, oh, well, it's a free for all. Every person for themselves.
Yeah.
But
you could make the same type of event without groups, right?
Yes, yeah, you could. But I mean, if you're already allied with someone, then you have to de-ally and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's why we make groups of 3 players max each group.
Okay. That makes some sense.
So 15 players in the event.
All right. So we're at about the 90-minute mark now. Any other last-minute discussions or questions that anybody wants to breach topics on before we end for today? All right, I will take that as a no. Due to everyone's silence, but I thank everybody who's here and who was here for joining us for this week's Brain Drain. I will have this hopefully up on YouTube shortly. As long as it takes YouTube to process and put up there. And I want to send a thanks to Mumphy for a new graphic that I have worked in a bit on this week's show. He said he was bored, so I figured I'd work it in to this week's podcast or show or whatever we're calling this entity. So I look forward to next week's show. Karma will have a poll up at some point during the week for our topics for next week. I would like to suggest maybe discussing the various server managers at length and see if we can get a couple people on board to come talk about their server managers, whether it's Rat, CSMM, Botman, whatever else is out there. Maybe we can get High Hope to be sober enough to talk about Panda, and we'll see. We'll reach out and see what the community wants, and that's what we'll go with. So everybody have a great rest of their weekend, what's left of it, depending where you're at. I know our Aussie and Kiwi friends are on the Sunday already. So everybody else, we'll see you next week, hopefully.
Yeah. In closing, I'll read one line. You get one line. Group, I implore thee, my fonting turling domes. There you go.
Read the fucking rule.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Have a good day.
Cheers.